about 53% of the yearly domestic hot water contribution we're anticipating should come from these domestic hot water panels. We put them out here. Sorry, I don't mean to steal your thunder here, but just a bit about where we put them. We put them out here, of course, to get them out from underneath the trees. And oftentimes solar panels are put on a roof. But with our large tree there, that's of course strategically placed to give us some shading in the summertime, there weren't a lot of options, and we also thought it was a shame to muck up a nice steel roof. So the solar panels came out front here.
Well, you're looking at the Vitasol 200 flat plate collector. There's a lot of different types of ones. We have actually 4 different types. Trying to either go on a sloped roof or a flat roof. What we use here is the flat plate mounting hardware, because instead of on a flat roof, we're on the ground. And it's mounted just on. And basically what Tom was saying, 53 to 60% of your domestic load can be handled by the solar panel. So basically you're getting a 50% glycol mix coming through the line, going through the panel back into your domestic tank inside. And the tank inside, which you'll see later, has a dual coil tank. And one of the coils is for the solar, the other coil is for the boiler. So when it's not a sunny day and the solar cannot keep up, the boiler kicks in and makes up the rest for the domestic loads.
Okay. And because Viessmann makes 2 different types of panels, the flat plate and the evacuated tubes.
There's evacuated tubes and the flat plate, yes.
And we went with the flat plate.
You went with the flat plate? Yeah, well the flat plate is, basically in this area, we went with flat plate. The snow melts faster off the flat plate panel. The vacuum tube, in a vacuum there's no heat thermal loss. So we tend, if you have snow situations, it'll stick to the tubes. So what we found here in this climate is that the flat plate panel is back in action faster after a snowstorm.
Because I asked my dad if he'd come out every day and clean it off, and he said no. So we went with a flat plate.
So you've maximized the tilt too, right?
Yes.
So,
yeah. You want to have a good tilt. You're maximizing, with being out in the open, you're maximizing the tilt, maximizing the exposure to the sun. There's no trees in front of it.
is this the most efficient size for this house?
It depends on the load, yes. It depends on how many people you've got in the house, and what we look at is we look how many people are residing in the house, what are your domestic hot water needs, how much laundry are you doing, do you have a jacuzzi tub, all these things factor. We have a solar checklist and we fill it out and we do a sizing software on our computer. And this is, in this particular case, we came out with 2 panels.
We had them do a few different simulations. We looked at a 3-panel system and a 5-panel system. We looked at a 5-panel system to do solar space heating as well. And when we got to that kind of size, if I remember the reports correctly, we were going to get about 70% of our domestic hot water and about 10% of the space heating. Only about 10% of the space heating. But to upsize to that 5-panel system was at least another 20 grand. So and of course then you need to get into the storage. As when John and I first started talking about this, we were talking about solar, it's all about storage. It's great if you can get it, but of course, solar panels like this for domestic hot water, you get your sun during the day, but you want to shower in the morning. So it's no good if it's not there in the morning. So that's where the storage tanks need to come in to hold it. So to hold the water for the 5-panel system was going to be huge. Of course, Brooke jokingly said, do you have a pool? You know, I mean, it kind of comes into that range. And if you did have a pool, it would make sense because in the summer you could divert it to that if you want the luxury of a pool. But 5 panels during the summer was just going to be banging off hot water, you know.
What you got to remember is with solar, you can't turn off the sun. And if you oversize, then what do you do with the extra? You either have to have a dump load somewhere else. You got to dump the heat somewhere.
When we did our original plans, we were going to do 2x6 construction. The original heat loss for that kind of building was about 50,000 BTUs. When we moved to ICF based construction, we're now at about 18,000 BTUs of heat required into the structure to keep it warm. So with that kind of heat loss, we did have an opportunity to add some solar contribution into it. Your Solar Home has a product here that gave us another way to get a solar contribution into the house. So maybe you can tell us a bit about your product. And of course, we're adding it as a preheat to the HRV.
Right.
The panels basically are air heating panels. So what they do is they draw air in. This particular setup is with fresh air, so there's a fresh, it's drawing outside air, heating it and blowing it into as a preheat for the HRV. These two panels put out about close to 7,000 BTUs, sitting this location obviously in the more westerly, I guess. So they'll get a lot of, and vertical, they get a lot of heat, particularly in the winter time. So for an HRV, when you really want the hot air to come in, that's the best application. And this particular one also has a PD panel built into it, so it has a fan, a built-in fan to help circulate the air into the HRV.
Outside, Tom mentioned that the design heat loss, the heating load of the building on the coldest day of the year was quite low. The thing that makes it low is the ICF, but it's also the triple glazed windows that we have that have two coatings of low emissivity in them, which is a reflective process, a selective coating that allows the windows to accept heat in the winter when we want it and to reject it in the summer when we don't need it. The other really, really important thing, and I think you can witness it from coming from outside in the wind, is this structure, this addition is very, very airtight, and that actually is one of the biggest sources of heat loss, like 30 to 40%. So when we make the building airtight and we give it a ventilation system, and again, I'm just trying to tie everything in here because the solar sheets out there from your solar home are a preheat for our ventilation system.
Right.
So very airtight, well-insulated building envelope with continuous ventilation and solar preheat.
And we'll go downstairs in a minute and see the HRV. But just to show you kind of where that's tying in, unit downstairs, we'll take a look at it called the HRV. But the solar panel on the side of the house then, and of course the ones out in the domestic hot water we were able to put out in the field because water can keep its heat. It's an insulated pipe, you can get it out there, get it back, but air loses its heat very quickly, so basically mounting it right on the side of the house, get the warm air inside the house, and then bring it inside the house and use it here. We chose to use Kent Truss's floor joists, open web floor joists, instead of something like TGI's. Made it really easy to be able to get stuff like that through. I personally did most of the low voltage wiring, and every time I went from one place to another, I thanked myself that we did that, instead of having to cut holes all the way through them. So that's what that's about, and of course, it's made it easy for the HVAC, the plumbing, the electrical, and so forth.
We installed radiant floor heating in all three floors, the basement, main floor, and upstairs. Upstairs, what we did was we put half-inch foam down on the floor, sheets of foam, and then we took plastic staples and secured the tubing to the plastic staples. So we're using half-inch PEX tubing. You can see the tubing coming up to the manifold here. And then we poured 1.5 inches of a lightweight self-leveling concrete, and that's what you see here. So we have a 1/2 inch of insulation underneath this tubing, and then the 1.5 inches of concrete. With the heat loss in the structure being so low, the water temperature we need to run through this floor is extremely low. I can be as low as 78 degrees, 75 degrees, depending on outdoor temperature. And there's one big advantage to running really low water temperatures is the lower you run the water temperatures, the more efficient the boilers become. So we can get boilers running 98, 99% efficient with radiant floor heating. So if you really want to squeeze every ounce of efficiency out of a system, radiant floor heating systems really do that. In fact, in Germany, over 50% of new construction now is radiant floor heating. Their fuel costs are quadruple what ours are, so they do everything they can to squeeze every ounce of efficiency out of the system. So if you can get a boiler running 98, 99% versus 90% and quadruple the fuel rate, you understand why. We have one zone of heating down here in the main floor. We have 2 zones upstairs, and we have 1 zone down in the basement. So radiant floor heating lends itself really well to zoning. I could have a zone in every single room. In a basement, there's always that damp feeling in a basement, and the perception is that it's moisture seeping into the structure, and that's where the damp feeling comes from. The majority of the time, that's not the case. It's actually moisture in the air that's condensing on a cold surface, and that cold surface is the basement floor. So once you insulate and put some radiant in there, there's not a cold surface for that moisture in the air to condense on. So the first thing you'll notice when you go into a basement with radiant floor heating is that damp musty feeling's not there. So there's some definite comfort advantages to radiant floor heating besides the energy efficiency advantages. The way our body loses energy is we lose about 50% of our body's energy via radiation, so we're radiated to cold surfaces. We lose it via convection, so breathing air going across your body, and then we lose it via evaporation as well, breathing and sweating. And what happens with radiant floor heating systems is we are now heating the floor, we're heating everything that's in contact with it. The chairs are warm, the tables are warm, the bathtub's going to be warm, the vanity's going to be warm, everything's warm. So you're not losing your body's energy to all these cold surfaces. So what ends up happening is, typically with a forced air system, the comfort level is about 72 degrees. But now we've changed the dynamics. There's not all these cold surfaces to lose your body's energy to. So what we end up doing is you probably find yourself setting the thermostats 69, 68 degrees and still have that same level of comfort because you're losing that body's energy differently. And every time you lower a thermostat setting 1 degree is a 3% energy savings. So just by going from 72 to 68, there's 12% right there.
50% of comfort is radiant heat loss.
Right.
So it's far more comfortable.
You find when you go through this whole structure, if all the thermostats were set the same temperature, the biggest temperature swing you'd see throughout the structure might be 2 or 3 degrees. And that's a stretch. If I did it in a forced air house, I could be upwards of 15 degrees. And from going from the top floor down to the basement in some corner.
Yeah, as your friend once said to me when we were talking about zoning, when I said how many zones we were going to do, and I think we said 4, which he said was 4 more than what you normally have.
Right.
Right. Normally it's 1 zone, 1 thermostat in the middle. And having said that, thermostat is right behind you there. So that's the thermostat for this floor. I guess it's set at 74. I guess I thought I was going to be. Does it feel warm? You know, yeah. Sorry. And if you want to, you can take your shoes off because your feet, will be. It's a hard surface, but they will be warm. The other thermostat there then behind you is the thermostat for the solar panel that's outside because it is bringing a contribution in, so it'll kick on and control that.
Radiant floor heating holds its energy. You could have the power out here for 2 days and still wouldn't be worrying about heat because we've stored all that energy in the mass and then we're going to release it. Quebec ice storm, people were still in their houses 5 days into the power outage. Stored all that energy.
And you bring up that idea of thermal mass. That was part of the whole idea of the ICF as well, because it just has concrete in it. It stores thermal mass as well, so it becomes a very moderating effect. The power pipe here, basically, we did 2 separate drains in this house. 1 drain that goes directly to septic, and 1 drain that takes tubs and showers and gathers those into a tank you'll see downstairs. But in gathering those drains, that one comes down this pipe here. The power pipe is effectively a copper pipe with another copper piping sleeve around the outside that brings the fresh water outside. So the scenario is you're having a shower, the shower water is still pretty warm, it's going down the drain. Typically you'd be losing all that heat energy there. It comes down, it comes in contact with the copper, it warms up the copper. As that hot water is going down, the cold water is coming up, being wrapped around it, and it's exchanging the heat from the drain water into the cold water, which is now pretty much warm water as it comes up to your tap. So you're not having to mix in as much hot in with your cold to get the temperature that you want. And as a result, you can recover about 50%, if I remember correctly, of the heat out of that drain water. Came across these solar tube or tubular skylights. ODL provided 5 solar tubes. Really, for the second floor, it was about natural lighting in here. We should be able to, now it's not an overly bright day outside, but on a bright day, you don't need a light on it up here. It is, and even this is pretty functional. So by adding in the tubular skylight to the large windows, we were able to pretty much accomplish that. So there's 3 that are working on this floor. There's 1 in the hallway here, and then 1 in each bathroom. 1 there, and 1 just in that bathroom there. And then there's 2 more. This one here, you'll see when we go down to the basement, this one is actually going right through to the basement. So it's a way of getting some natural light into the center of the building.
What we're really trying to do here is create this very airtight envelope. I mean, it's so critical to our heating and cooling load and trying to maintain this very, very tight envelope. They've done a great job on the walls using the ICF. Now the next big challenge, the very large heat loss area is everything that's moving up, and that's what we've got to try and capture now. So just due to the nature of the construction, it seemed like one of the best solutions was to use Icynene spray foam installation. Icynene is a Canadian product. It's actually invented in Canada by University of Waterloo Engineering, and has been in the market for about 25 years. Very well respected, long track record. It's an open cell spray foam that sprays in place, and what it does is able to capture all the imperfections, all the nooks and crannies within that cavity space, so we get a very, very airtight seal. That's how we were able to get around all the penetrations around the light tubes and the plumbing penetrations, where the ICF kind of terminates up there and it meets the end as the wall comes down and goes up to the roof. All those areas were captured very, very well in terms of an air barrier that you could never do with traditional construction.
Icynene is being used now as whole home, and you can certainly see an example of that out in Rodeo,
Correct.
where the houses are built with Icynene right to
First and second floor.
first, second floor.
First, second floor and ceiling.
And, yeah, skip coat,
And skim coat in the attic.
garage floor.
And we saw this as the solution to getting a complete envelope. I'll mention in the basement, underneath the slab, there's insulation under the slab. So there's insulation right underneath the slab, up the walls, right up to the top, completely encapsulated. So again, very airtight. The windows we talked a little bit about. Inline fiberglass provided their windows. John talked a little bit about the windows generally. Triple pane, fiberglass casing. The fiberglass, as opposed to vinyl, which would be common, fiberglass expands and shrinks at the same speed as the glass, so there's no, typically with the vinyl and glass, they grow and shrink at different rates based on the heat, and so you can have the windows kind of come apart, lose contact between the vinyl and the glass. Longevity for us. The triple pane part of it was, as we were working through the process, realizing that we were going to have these great walls that were going to have incredible insulation value, and then we started looking at windows and going, wait a sec, we're just going to blow it all out the windows. So we had to come up with a solution for that. The windows are coming in at around, I'm going by memory here, but I believe they're around an R6 kind of equivalent, something like that. And that doesn't sound like an awful lot when you're talking about like R30 walls, but in windows, that is very good. And of course, windows are not just about heat resistance, but it's also about letting the heat in. So part of the strategy in the project, I mentioned the tree out the front here, was to gain solar heat gain. So large window here, two large windows on the first floor. So when it's a sunny day, we should be getting heat on our domestic hot water, the sun coming in the side of the house, plus a solar heat gain coming through these windows and helping to heat up the concrete mass in the floor. That's the overall strategy. And John mentioned the low E squared coatings on this. So they're designed to be able to let heat in. Some of the windows, depending on where they are, completely reflect any heat. These ones were to let heat in. And of course, we did a cathedral ceiling. It was just an opportunity from a design point of view to make a great space that felt open. Do anything down here room. We can visualize a screen over there with a Wii. I'm sure it will be great fun. But from an energy point of view, here's the tubular skylight. So if you look straight up that, you'll see that goes all the way to the roof. There's I should mention there's a little light socket in there as well. So from an electrical point of view, in the daytime it brings some light in. A little light bulb that goes in there. So in the nighttime you flick the switch with everything else and it comes on and looks like it's daylight as well. HRV. So we've talked a bit about HRV, how airtight the building is, and how we need to bring ventilation in through it. The HRV here is the workhorse that's doing that for us. We mentioned the solar panel that's out on the west side of the house. So it comes down through this pipe here, comes in the house, comes down there, along to the HRV, and the HRV then distributes it through the rest of the house. So John, tell us a bit more about the HRV.
So the best way to think about this is, again, we have an airtight house, so this is like a set of lines. And unfortunately, the doors turn the opposite way. But there's 2 cross-flow heating cores in here. Because of the surface area of those cores, this is about 90% efficient. And again, what this is doing is supplying fresh air to the house on a continuous basis. This particular HRV has a DC motor in it, so it can run on about 38 watts on its lowest speed. So conceivably, it could come from a photovoltaic panel in terms of the current requirements. And the other function this serves is a point exhaust system for the kitchens and the bathrooms. So when you're taking a shower, you make an odor in those areas, you can flip a switch and this will run on high speed to actually get rid of the stale air with the odor in it. Because the house again is airtight, this is also a moisture management system. We haven't got it quite hooked up, but there's a condensate drain on the bottom, and this is actually acting as a dehumidifier in the winter. So if we're producing excess humidity, we actually have a way of controlling the humidity level in the house. Tom made the point that we're missing a forced air distribution system in this part, in the addition. So this is serving as our fresh air supply system under the building code.
You mentioned about bathrooms, and I know especially one of the bathrooms here we were looking at, it seemed funny to me when we were looking at creating such a airtight house and then putting bathroom exhaust fans in the side of the wall that would take the air and just kind of blow it out the side of the house. And so taking this, and John mentioned the switch that goes in the bathroom, kicks it into high mode, cleans out the bathrooms, and takes care of that issue completely.
So the other thing we've got here is we've actually integrated this into the solar air collectors that we saw on the side of the houses. So there's a winter-summer switch here, and what we're doing is selecting where we're going to take the fresh air from. So in the summer, we're actually going to draw it from the sidewall because we don't want to bring heated air in, obviously, in the summer. And in the winter, we're actually going to take the free heat off those solar panels. And Bob was mentioning that we can probably get about 7,000 BTUs off those when the sun's shining. And the load on this house is 18,000. And if we lower the thermostat, like Peter's saying, it's actually closing in on probably about 15,000. So conceivably, 40% of the load, the heating load of the addition could come from those panels.
Right. And that's what we found, looking at practical solutions to be able to meet the targets. Of course, people are talking about net zero and getting to a place where the house actually generates as much energy as it uses. I don't believe we're quite at that point yet, but we're getting closer with using some of these strategies. Just before we head into the old parts of the house, because that's where most of the rest of the mechanicals are and so forth, I do want to talk a bit about the eco-energy program. For us, the eco-energy program came into place because it is a renovation, and even though some of the elements of the mechanicals are working for the new portion of the house as well, it did qualify for the eco-energy program. And so that is a great opportunity for homeowners that are looking to do renovations and upgrades to their house. I think this is a bit of a unique situation because there is so much new construction in this house, and yet it is an addition, and there are renovation sides to it as well. So for a homeowner that wants to really green up their house, the next section we're going to talk about with the boiler and so forth is a real strategy of doing that. And of course, all these systems also apply to new construction as well. For the sake of understanding, within this house, in the eco-energy program, we almost maxed out the program. The program has a max of about $10,000, and we got to about $9,500 in terms of the rebates that we're told the check is in the mail. So this is the original portion of the house. Peter here, Peter refers to this as the artwork, so we tried to light it up appropriately. So Peter, I'll let you have it, and you can talk a bit about what we got going here.
The main piece of equipment is the Reisman wall-hung boiler. It is providing the space heating, and it's also providing the domestic hot water. There's a lot of efficiencies to be gained by doing that. This unit, when we're in space heating, is probably pushing 98, 99% efficient. And in fact, it's running right now. That's how quiet these units are. So it's at somewhere in the house, I could go through the controls, somewhere in the house we're providing space heating right now. And that's, everything's running right now, that's how quiet it is. This unit will modulate from, what is it, Rob, 100,000 down to 20?
37 up to 118.
37,000 up to 118, so it's basically cruise control that you have on your car. We have it built into the boiler, so we only put in as much power as the building requires. There's a couple of pumps in the system that you see throughout. The one really nice thing about water, and this is part of the business plan of the big organizations, with water I can move about 200 times more energy in the same size of pipe as I can with forced air. Right? With these pipes I can move 100,000 BTUs. If I wanted to do the same thing with ductwork, we wouldn't be able to stand in this room. Right? So you can move a lot of energy a long way with real small pipes. So I'd say 98% of the European market is all water-based heating. So we're providing hot water for the air handler, which is right over here. So as opposed to having a flame in that unit, we have a coil that would resemble what a radiator core would look like in your car. So it's providing the hot water for the fan coil, and then it's providing hot water to the manifolds on each floor in the house to heat up the floors, which is in turn heating the floors. And then it's providing second stage domestic hot water. So the big tank we have here, there's two coils inside. There's one coil in the bottom that is hooked up to the solar panels outside. So the hot water from the solar panels is going through the coil in here, which is heating up the surrounding water. And if that can't keep up, if it's the middle of the night and we have a lot of domestic hot water requirements, it can't keep up, or there's no sun to be harvested at the time, there's a second coil which is hooked up to the boiler as well. And then we will dedicate the power over to here. So it's providing our second stage of space heating. It's doing our forced air in the old section of the house, and it's providing the radiant floor heating on the new addition, all at 98% efficient, and that's, again, as loud as you'll get. And the pumps are running, everything's running right now. So it's virtually silent.
And just to add to that a bit, maybe a bit more hands-on or pictorially, so Peter mentioned the domestic hot water tank, so it's basically coming off of here. It kind of gets first priority. If you feel that, that's hot. So it's the kind of thing, if you want hot water and you're in the shower and you want it now, this thing can give it to you now. Matter of fact, it can really, you will not run out of hot water on this, which, anyway. So that's kind of first priority there. Then second priority, it gets these pipes off here. You'll see the pipes coming across there to the Life Breath Clean Air furnace, which, as Peter said, is basically just taking the heat off the hot water and putting it through the duct system. And then third priority is the radiant floor out there. And so on this primary loop, the heat's going around this, sending heat wherever it needs to, comes back cooler, goes back and gets warmed up again. And it just keeps doing the loop all the way around, whoever needs heat off it.
The controls we put in are measuring the outdoor temperature, and we adjust the water temperatures we run through the air handler and run through the floors based on the outdoor temperature. So I think I can get I've got it set as high as 140 on the coldest day of the year, and then on the shoulder periods like we're experiencing now, a little colder now though, we'll run 110 degree water. So why put all that energy in? And it's like hitting your gas pedal to the metal when you call for heat. Again, it's a bit of cruise control, so there's some logics that are built in, and we gain some more efficiencies. This system overall, compared to a traditional system, and with what we've done here, just in energy, we're probably pushing 40% energy savings over a conventional system. Right? That's everything combined, doing the domestic hot water. Because now I'm doing domestic hot water at 98, well, it's going to drop down. About 90% efficient on my domestic hot water, and all the tank type gas-fired water heaters are 70% efficient.
You're using
if you're
one
lucky.
appliance, so you got one exhaust too.
Yeah.
So one exhaust. So environmentally, it's
Yeah. And the builders, for the builders, it's solved some challenges when they're building townhouses, trying to get all these penetrations in the structures and still have all their clearances from the openings.
Just the other comment with the drain water heat recovery, it's actually taking that up in about 140%.
Probably. Yeah,
Yeah.
once we factor in.
And then we have the free heat from the solar water
air.
collectors.
Yeah.
And the solar air.
Yeah.
And something that John mentioned to me early on when we were starting this process was about the idea of a modulating boiler and this idea of efficiency of keeping something on rather than a furnace that we're typically familiar with. A furnace kicks on, kicks off, and it comes on 100%, stays on at that for X period of time, gets to the temperature, turns off. Stays off for a while. It's that kind of cycling on and off, on and off. Or something like this will tend to come on, stay on longer. If it needs more, it'll ramp up, it'll ramp down, that kind of idea, and gaining the efficiency in that process. You mentioned the Life Breath air handler. I think you explained fairly well what that is about. Of course, we had a duct base. There used to be, part of the bar of comparison is the oil furnace that used to be sitting here. So from a retro renovation point of view, it's simply a matter of taking that out and then replacing it with an air handler that would take the heat from the boiler. And it also includes an HRV in it as we are tightening up this side of the house. This is a Century farmhouse, so I will talk a bit about the insulation here for a moment. The field stone 2-foot thick walls. We found that out when we busted through it with this door here, the guy on the jackhammer. So that's what the original walls were. There was no insulation in the basement at all here. Of course, we haven't put anything under the slab because I don't think anybody's up for chipping this away. It'll be what it is, but we did have an opportunity to put some insulation on the walls, and so that's what we did there. The fact that this has an HRV in it will allow us to get fresh air coming in and out of here, even as we are insulating it better. Very last thing in this is the gray water tubs and showers are drained into this tank right here. The idea being then that we can use that gray water out of the tubs and showers and use that for toilet flushing. You might say you get 2 kicks to the can, as it were. No. So for a larger family, well, for any family, but of course in our case, a little larger family, having showers, that's basically going to fill the tank up here, and then that's probably going to happen mainly in the morning, and then the rest of the day just going to start taking it down. And it will do makeup water in case, the New Year's Eve party, when it's being used an awful lot, it's not an issue, but it does give us a way to reduce our demand on the well that we do have here. So between that and the drain water heat recovery, when you take a shower, you can take it almost guilt-free because you're getting the heat off and you're saving the water.
So this actually does have a filtration system inside it from the showers for air and things like that. And there are chlorine pucks in here that you'd use in pools. So the water actually going back to the toilets is treated, it gets chlorinated.
Yes.
And so just to give you an idea, 2 showers a day or 3 showers a day would fill this tank. And so this tank's 250 liters. That's a lot of toilet flushing. So you're going to be looking for ways to use water.
Use it?
Yeah.
There we are.
And lastly, Tom's on a septic system, so it's actually going to add to the life of the septic system. It's going to produce less of a load because the water from the showers is going to be used twice, basically.
Yes. Yes, and when we were designing the septic system, I asked if we were going to get credit for that, and of course the dual flush toilets that are going to be included, and I was told no, we wouldn't. We had to make it the same size, but nonetheless, it's all about extending the life of. I mean, that's really. John has referred to something as first fuel. Conservation is the first fuel, and wherever we can conserve energy or resource, not only does it extend that resource, but it extends the life of the mechanicals that are involved in that.